something most of us have never witnessed before. It will take us inside two of the most amazing structures in the natural world. Our hands and feet. Two parts of our body that define us as human. I'm George McGavin, and as a biologist, I think that to truly understand our hands and feet, we need to look inside them. To do this, we've created our own dissection lab. We've brought together the tools, the technology, and leading experts in human anatomy. Over 2 programs, we're going to dissect the human hand and foot to discover what makes them unique. And we're going to start with our hands. We're about to reveal them as you've never seen them before. We're going to take a real human hand apart, systematically, layer by layer.
Wow, that is absolutely glorious.
We'll discover the incredible natural engineering that drives our actions, and the microscopic structures that give us our remarkable sense of touch. I'll meet people whose hands have astonishing abilities.
Whoa! Sorry, whoa.
Surprise!
Beyond the lab, I'll be putting my hands to the test.
37.5.
Yes!
And I'll look at other animals whose hands give us clues to the origins of our own.
If you're going to have a contest with a chimp from wrestling,
We might win that one, yeah.
taking a hand apart will be challenging. It's something I've never seen before, and it might provoke a strong reaction. But it will reveal how the extraordinary anatomy of the hands has brought about some of the greatest achievements of human civilization.
Our hands are unique in the animal kingdom. They give us immense strength, yet also the finest of control. And this combination of power and precision has given us, alone among species, the ability to shape the world around us.
We take our hands for granted, but if you think about it, they really are truly remarkable. Without them, there would have been no Michelangelo, no Mozart, and we rely on them for simple everyday tasks. No other animal has hands like us, so I really want to understand how they work and what gives them their special capabilities.
To reveal the hand's secrets, we've set up our dissection lab in the Anatomy Museum of Glasgow University. They've been studying the human body here for over 100 years. And to perform the delicate operation of dissecting the hand, we've brought together an expert team. Donald Samet is one of the country's leading hand surgeons.
Our hands are what we use to mould the world. Everything we achieve in a practical sense is directed by our brain, but is achieved with our hands. Many of us, express ourselves with our hands, and in fact in some fields, for example, musicians live through their hands. Their identity is entirely tied up in their hands.
That's the first thing you do.
That's right.
When you meet
And incidentally,
like that.
as you do that, you realize that that is the only part of anatomy that you can touch in polite society.
Anatomy expert Dr. Quentin Fogg will lead our dissection. He has carefully prepared our specimen following the strict medical and ethical protocols that govern the dissection of human tissue.
Hi, Quentin.
Hi.
So this is the arm that we'll be looking at today.
Yeah, this is the upper limb of a person who's donated themselves to medical education and research.
Now, for some people, this might seem a distasteful or even shocking thing, but it is essential, isn't it?
That's the only way that we can truly appreciate the detail of the human body and understand anatomy in its real working condition.
We're ready to start our dissection. For me, this is the first, and I must admit I'm feeling a bit apprehensive. To really understand how the hand works, we need to begin by looking just outside it, in the forearm.
Okay, I'll make the incision at the top, and then we'll raise the skin flap together.
Right.
And as I make an incision, the first thing what you'll notice is fat pouting out, because fat is the first layer beneath the skin.
I'm finding this a bit difficult to watch, but it's absolutely fascinating.
So the skin and fat are being lifted as one layer.
Once the fat's removed, the first thing we see are muscles.
These muscles that Quentin is exposing here, which come from above the elbow, this entire bulk here is dedicated to giving power to the hand. So the hand's like a puppet, and all the strings are up here, and they are the ones that give it power, while all the fine movements happen in the hand. If you show me your forearm, you can feel the muscles contract as you make and unmake a fist, from that point all the way down to here.
Yeah. So essentially all the power that I generate with my fingers comes from way up here.
Precisely.
So that's where the power in my hand comes from. But it still needs to get from the muscles in my arm into my hand. And that's the job of tendons.
Each muscle belly connects to a tendon. You can see this tendon here.
Yeah.
It's like a very tough bit of rope, really.
Yeah.
Very slippery, as you can see, very shiny, because it has to glide through various tunnels.
And they are the actuators of the fingers, all the bits that have to be moved.
Precisely. They transmit power from this muscle belly, generated by this muscle belly, to its destination.
Tendons connect muscle to bone. They're vital for making the hand move.
I tug on that, look at the little finger flexing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So you can see the connection between this fine muscle belly all the way down, transmitting its force to the little finger. And you can do this for each muscle. For example, here is the ring finger. You can see, you can find them all individually and pull on them, see, and make each finger contract individually.
It's a bit unsettling to see a lifeless hand move like this, but it's an extraordinary insight into how the hand works.
And all these have to pass through the wrist, which is quite a small space.
Yes, that is part of their function, really. If you want to pass through a confined space or to go around corners, then you cannot do it with a muscle belly. If you make a muscle belly go around a corner, that bit is going to be deprived of blood. And muscle needs blood, while tendon can survive on relatively much less.
These tendons are very long. They stretch all the way from the forearm as far as the tips of our fingers, and that brings a major advantage. It's a principle that mechanics use all the time.
So one good way to think about that is if you tried to take the nut off of a car tire and used a very, very short lever, short spanner, it'd be really difficult. But if you extend the length of that and make it a really, really long lever, it becomes amazingly easy all of a sudden. This is what a tendon is doing. If we had a tiny tendon here, the amount of force generated there would be quite small, whereas if we elongate that tendon down to the tip of the fingers, it all of a sudden becomes a really powerful output.
Power is the first key attribute of the hand, and it's brought about some of our greatest achievements. From sporting success to building the man-made world. The power of our hands is also vital to our everyday actions. As Quentin gets on with the dissection, Donald can show me the surprising ways we use this strength all the time.
we can break down the tasks that a hand achieves into different forms of grip. At its most primitive, the hand is a scoop. So if I gave you these to bring towards you without picking them up, you'd do that. So you're using your hand as a paddle, as a scoop. If you had to pick up a large object like this,
well, I'd do that.
right. So you see, what you're doing there, your hand is being used as a simple, straightforward paddle. All the force is coming from further up in your arm, all those big muscles there. So you're not using your hand as a very sophisticated instrument, but it's effective.
This primitive grip is something other animals can do, but we are capable of different power grips that are uniquely human.
If you were to pick this up, you are using power grip, and you can only do that because your thumb is now dialoguing, if you like, with your other fingers to grasp that object.
Yes, if I didn't have that, it would just fall out of my hand.
Yes, so suddenly you've added a whole new range of tasks. Another example of that sort of clamping action is a key grip. So if you hold that, you see you've clamped onto that key. We are still using these muscles. Look, as you do that opening action, you are rotating at the elbow and using these muscles to clamp onto that object.
These strong grips make our hands amazingly versatile. They enable us to lift and lower, pull and push, twist and turn, carry, hit and chop. But there are some people who push the power of their hands to the absolute limit. Rock climbers trust their lives to the strength of their hands. They often support and lift their entire weight using only their fingertips. To me, it seems almost superhuman. So what makes their hands capable of such extremes? Dr. Nigel Callender studies what's different about the hands of high-performance climbers.
Some of these guys are able to hang their entire body weight off a single finger. Essentially, this demonstrates the extremes that the anatomy of the hand is able to withstand.
Ned Feely is one of the UK's top rock climbers. To see how my hands compare with his, we're going to put them to the test.
This is a device that we use for testing hand grip strength, which we've modified to look more specifically at finger strength alone. What we're going to do is we're going to set this up so that Ned is able to use it.
Nigel is going to see how much force we can generate with our fingers.
I'm going to get you to line up just your fingertips on the force bar on our device here.
Let's see what Ned can do. He has to push down with his fingertips as hard as he can for 5 seconds.
That's it, come on, push, 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 push. Excellent, good stuff. And relax. Okay, so we have our first reading there, which is coming in at 49 kilos.
That's quite impressive, isn't it?
And now it's my turn.
I want your middle finger to line up just on the edge of the force bar here.
On that?
On the first joint,
Yeah.
that's right. Just push, 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 push. Excellent.
That's actually much harder than I thought it was going to be.
You have about 36.5 kilos there.
36.
We're allowed 3 attempts, so can I do any better?
That's it. Come on, George. Push, 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 push. Excellent. Good stuff. So that time we actually went up as far as 37.5 kilos.
Yes.
Pretty pleased with my efforts, but it's almost a quarter less force than Ned managed to exert with his fingers.
As a percentage, that's really quite a large difference in terms of Ned's performance versus yours.
Given their training, we might expect some extra muscle power, but Nigel's work suggests there's more to climbers' abilities than just strength. He's going to show me what's happening inside a climber's hand.
We have a piece of string, which is going to act as our tendon. If I pop our tendon on here, which roughly runs pretty much the length of the finger and attaches to the muscles up here in the forearm. We'll pop pieces of tape around the fingers to act as just the main pulleys in the fingers.
Pulleys are soft tissues that hold tendons against the finger bone. It's believed that through heavy use, both the pulleys and the tendons become thicker in frequent climbers, and that actually helps them keep a tight grip.
As the finger comes under load, there's going to be a certain amount of friction between these pulleys
And the tendon itself.
and the tendon itself.
That makes sense. Actually, I can feel that actually in a way. It's interesting, I can actually feel that.
Yeah.
And how does that make a difference to climbing?
Well, this assists the whole system in maintaining a closed grip. It stops the finger it helps to stop the finger from being forced open. So essentially we're not relying purely on muscular strength to hold our hand closed.
So if you're a regular climber, the soft tissues in your hand actually change in ways that allow you to grip for longer. And if you look deeper into climbers' hands, there's an even more fundamental way that they differ from the rest of us.
Take a look at these x-rays. What we have here, on the right, we have an x-ray of one of the finger bones of a climber who's been at it for over 10 years. And on the left, we have that of a normal person. And what I think is probably quite clear is that this white bone is quite considerably thicker than in our non-climber over here.
I mean, I know we adapt to the environment, but that is quite remarkable.
The bright white part is a hard outer layer on the bone, and we can see on the climber's hand that there's far more of it. And that's not the only difference in the bones Nigel has discovered.
Over time, the bone density, the actual bone mineral content, increases in climbers compared to non-climbers. And so you wind up with bone that's not only bigger, but also stronger.
The climber's bones have a higher concentration of minerals, such as calcium. This helps make the bones more able to withstand weight.
The more you use your fingers, the more stresses and strains you put on your bone, the stronger the bones of your hand become.
Yeah, it's not just a fixed structure within the body, it's constantly in a state of turnover, and it will respond to increased demands placed on it.
Nigel's work has shown that our hands adapt to what we do with them, and it's not just at a skin-deep level. We can physically change their structure through the way we use them. Our hand is capable of more than just power. It also gives us precision. Exceptional fine control that allows us to manipulate our world as no other species can. We use this dexterity in an infinite number of ways, and it can be put to mystifying effect. Kevin McMahon has been a magician for 9 years.
Okay.
Hi, George.
Now, you've made a career out of the incredible things you can do with your hands, specifically your fingers and thumbs.
Magic is a really intriguing art form for me, and every performance that I do in close-up magic setting is underpinned by sleight of hand.
How much do you appreciate what you can actually achieve with your hands?
Anything, even the pressure there, for instance, for me just to do a normal fan, this movement here took me a good couple of weeks to get that right. And the main reason I think is because the pressure between your thumb and your finger is released as you're going round. Then there's fancy cuts, there's ways of mixing the cards up in a way that's appeasing to the eye. These things take a lot of time to get right. There's a lot of coordinated finger action, things that all happen at the same time. You just have to get right, because you can't afford to have a card explosion and all the cards go over the floor. So you have to spend hours making sure the cards are moving in the right way and the right rhythm is there.
But of all the digits, there's one in particular that's essential to Kevin: the thumb.
The thumb's involved in everything from the flourishes to the card fan to simply to pick a card. I mean, I have to spread the cards out with my thumb. You know, this action happens automatically, but my thumb is, you know, quite impressively distributing the cards very evenly into a fan. I've never thought about that before, if I'm honest. Even a colour change, for instance, having the card change from the jack into the 3.
Whoa.
That is...
Whoa! Sorry, whoa!
Surprise! That is something which requires a lot of action on the thumb to create that pivot, to hold the card in place. And it's just everything that you do as a magician will use your thumb to make the magic happen. It's probably the most important digit I have.
Oh. What's that? Oh, right, there we are.
George.
Couldn't resist that. Kevin, thanks very much.
Thanks, George. Bye now.
Of all our 5 digits, it's the thumb that's the most versatile and the most important. In order to discover exactly what gives our thumb its unique abilities, we're about to take our first look inside the hand.
So we're now under the palm skin there, and what's the first thing that's obvious?
Yes, I mean, Quentin has removed only the skin. So everything you see here was just beneath the skin. And the first and most striking thing is that the general arrangement of the hand is that it's got sort of 2 hills and a valley in the middle. And these 2 hills consist of muscle, and they serve the little finger and the thumb.
To look at the thumb in more detail, we need to strip away this tough tissue between the muscles. It protects vital structures in the palm.
So that is a very tough sheet that is now being peeled back, which will reveal the real inner machinery.
Yes, they'll be surrounded by fat, but yes, it covers all the important structures that come through: the major artery, the major nerves, and all of the flexor tendons.
Now we can begin to see what gives our thumb its precision. No fewer than 9 muscles are dedicated to controlling it.
And these small muscles here, this entire group of muscles which belong specifically to the thumb, they're dedicated to the thumb, orientate it in space. All of this is very precise. You can see these muscles here. For example, this muscle, its job is to lift the thumb away from the palm. And then you have another short muscle here which flexes the thumb like that. So already it can curl around an object. And there's a very powerful muscle in here which you can just about glimpse there. And that's going from the thumb to this bone here. And you can imagine, therefore, that if you've got an object here, that will slam the thumb right against it and be a very powerful pinch, produce a very powerful pinch. You can see those muscles there, those fibers will all contract and bring the thumb against your other fingers. Quite hard.
I'm beginning to appreciate the complex machinery it takes to move our thumb with such precision. And it doesn't end with the muscles. We also need to look even deeper at the skeleton of the hand.
Well, the thumb skeleton is very specialized, as you can imagine. This is where the base of the thumb is. And that joint, it may surprise you to learn that most of the movement doesn't happen here. It happens at the base. 90% of your movement happens at the base. So the thumb moves as one big column. And that joint, I've been trying to doodle it here. It's very difficult to render the double plane in which it moves. But it's a saddle joint. Conventionally, it's known as a saddle joint. And this bone is the one you've got at the base of your thumb here. And there is the platform on which it lies. We can show it on this bone here. This is your thumb metacarpal. And this is the trapezium, which is at the base here. And so if I put them together, there's the saddle shape. It permits me to move in this plane, and it also permits me to move in that plane.
I can do that.
Yes. And you're moving mainly at the base.
At the base.
So the muscles we've seen are able to act on this very versatile and mobile joint.
but there's a price to be paid for the mobility of our thumb. As with any joint in our body, the bigger the range of movement, the greater the danger of injury.
The more mobile a joint is, the more likely it is to wear or to dislocate. In fact, this joint is the most commonly worn joint in the body. It beats the hip, it beats the knee.
Really?
Yes. And the reason is that the platform, the trapezium here, has to be at a slant in order to enable the thumb to live away from the palm. If you were to apply force directly like that to the thumb, that would be quite stable. As soon as you put it on a slant and you take force, it's going to slip out. And so there's a whole system of ligaments to hold it back in place, and you can imagine how much more likely that would be to wear.
Though the saddle joint is susceptible to injury, it gives us a crucial ability. An opposable thumb. In other words, our thumb can move directly opposite each of our fingers to touch them tip to tip. It's something no other animal can do with this much precision. So how did we come to have such a dexterous hand?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Dr. Tracy Cavell is researching the origins of the human hand. She's been investigating the differences between our hands and those of our closest animal relatives, chimpanzees.
The most obvious thing about chimpanzees is they have much longer fingers and a longer palm than we do, and it allows them to grasp onto the branch like this with a hook grip.
So the chimpanzee's palm and fingers are longer than ours. But what about our thumbs?
A lot of people think that the main difference between a human hand and a chimpanzee hand is our opposable thumbs. But chimpanzees also have opposable thumbs. Actually, all apes and monkeys have opposable thumbs.
But there is a key difference that sets our thumb apart. It's longer than the chimps, so it can more easily reach the tips of all our fingers.
Their thumb is actually quite short and much weaker than ours. Yeah.
If you're going to have a contest with a chimp arm wrestling, you would lose. But thumb wrestling, you might actually get off with.
We might win that one, yeah.
Having shorter fingers and longer thumbs gives us far more precise movements than the chimps.
Their ability in humans to use precision grips, not just to our index finger, but to all of our fingers, allows us to manipulate objects, particularly small objects, with great accuracy.
But what caused the hands of our early ancestors to change in this fundamental way? Researchers like Tracy are delving deep into our past to look for answers.
Well, I think it's a combination of two things. It's one that we no longer use our hands for locomotion. We no longer needed these really long fingers that we see in chimpanzees. It allowed our fingers to get a little bit shorter, and that may have sort of pre-adapted us to being more manipulative. And then the other main reason is likely is tool use, and specifically stone tool use. And when you think about making a stone tool, you need both precision and force, and that's exactly what we have in the human hand.
So it's likely that the very act of using stone tools drove the evolution of a more versatile and dexterous hand. And this allowed our early ancestors to manipulate objects in ways that no other species could. An ability that would allow us to shape and dominate our world. We've seen that the thumb is the main player in our hand, but our other four digits also have a vital role in our dexterity. So do they all play an equal part? That's what we're going to look at next in our dissection.
Wow, that is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, you've laid bare the internal workings of the hand.
Yes, you can see Quentin's isolated and identified all of the major structures in the palm now. Can I ask you, George, you can see the four fingers here almost equal as a group against the thumb, but if you were to lose a finger by choice, which one do you think you could do without?
I have a feeling I'm going to get this wrong, but I would have said the small finger, but I just know it's wrong.
You were right first time, you got it wrong, yes. The one, again, it might surprise you even more, that one would lose would be the index.
The index finger?
Yes, the index finger would be the one you could most do without.
That is surprising.
Yes, the index is a bit of a paradox, really. Although it's included in everything we do, you can exclude it from everything you do. You can hold a pen and write in the same handwriting with the index excluded. The little finger, in fact, is much more important than one thinks. It's vital for grip. It can approach the thumb very much more than the other fingers. We've shown the group of muscles that are dedicated to the thumb, and there's an identical group of muscles dedicated to the little finger. They're slimmer and finer, but actually they do exactly the same thing. They even have the same names, virtually. And in fact, when the thumb comes across to give you precision grip, the little finger is able to approach it in a way to make its task easier. And the little finger is the most mobile finger after the thumb.
Before we can see inside the other fingers, Quentin has to remove the skin. While he does this, Donald's going to show me how our fingers give us unparalleled fine control.
So far, we've looked at grip, which is immensely strong, but not very versatile. If we wanted versatility, you're going to have to go down to these small joints. And an example of this would be unscrew a bottle. You see that? You're using your fingertips now, and that is 3-point or chuck grip. I'll do it.
My goodness.
Oh, George. Okay. If you do that, you see now I'm using only those end joints.
Yeah.
That's a very much more precise, but of course weaker action. If we wanted to be very precise, for instance to write, then what we must do is eliminate all the big, let's call them clumsy boys, and
The clumsy muscles.
precisely, they're powerful, but they're not very precise. And by putting my arm down like that, I've eliminated all action of the big, strong muscles.
That's interesting, because if you want to be precise, you've got to isolate the
You must
hand so that
stabilize.
you can do that.
You must stabilize
It's
your
either
hand.
flat,
Yes.
or artists often have a brace, a stick,
That's right, that's
which
right.
they can paint with.
I am using, and I need to use, these very precise small muscles and small joints in the hand. When I operate, for example, you will see any surgeon operating with any precision, he will often immobilize his entire forearm right down to the tip of the little finger in order to be precise with his instruments. All these types of grip I've given you, they're, to some extent, that's an artificial division. Every task requires the right amount of force or precision. So one's always going from one type of grip to another.
It's these very precise grips that allow us to fine-tune the world. And much of this precision is down to the amazing flexibility of our fingers. Back at the dissection table, Quentin's ready to show us what gives our fingers this ability.
We've removed the skin over the front of the finger here. We can see the full length of this sheath which is encasing these tendons. I'm going to put my scissors in and cut along the length of this. This will unveil more and more of the tendon in absolutely pristine condition that's been protected by this tendon its entire life. As we pull back the sides of that sheath, there's the tendon, the superficial one splitting and going to either side to stop halfway down the finger, and then the deep one running through this little tunnel that's been created so it can go all the way down to the end of that finger.
Tendons we saw in the forearm now reach their final destination at the ends of our fingers. One threads through the other so that each of the last two finger joints has a separate tendon to move it. And that gives our fingers both strength and flexibility.
If Quentin tugs on that, you see the finger bend on the superficial one, only the superficial one. Yeah, you can see this joint is not moving at all. But if he tugs on the deep one, this one, look, see the other joint moving as well.
Yes.
And that shows you that this deep one is inserting last into the tip, yeah.
I'm in awe at the elegance of this natural machinery. And that's just to let us bend both joints at the ends of our fingers. But this doesn't fully explain the subtlety of control we have over our digits.
Watching a pianist play, I can't help but be impressed by the remarkable range and dexterity of the hands. But there's something else that strikes me. It's the coordination of the fingers, striking the keys at precisely the right time to achieve musical perfection. How does the hand do that?
Dissection has shown me a beautiful aspect of the engineering of the hand. The components all work together, each building on the action of the others. And Quentin's ready to show me the next small but influential piece of the machine, one that gives our fingers that coordinated movement.
We have these little small muscles sitting between the big long tendons that run to each finger, and these little slips of muscle here look a little bit like worms, and their name actually comes from the Latin for worm, which is lumbrical. Their job is a really varied and important job. They can do lots of different things to change how our fingers work. So if I pull on the long tendon which is flexing this finger here, then we just get a complete flexion of the finger. If I modify this now with the lumbrical contracting, then it subtly changes the angle. And so this can change not only the angle of the finger, but the rate of contraction and the rate of flexion that we're getting. And we can do this for each of the four fingers.
That is just amazing. These little thin muscles coordinate the action of the tendons. They pull on them to slow down or speed up their movement. They can refine the movement of each finger independently and make us capable of truly astonishing coordinated precision.
So the idea of the lumbrical being able to modify what each finger is doing and add in a whole lot of extra benefits like timing is a really fantastic feature of our hand.
And that adds in a whole extra layer of fine control.
It means we can be infinitely precise, really.
The mechanics of our hand is more complex and sophisticated than I ever imagined. Clearly, it can't work on its own. It needs something to control it. And there's one part of us that determines how we use our hands more than anything else. Our brain. The interaction between the brain and the hand intrigues me. Perhaps it's because I'm left-handed. I've always wondered why we use our hands differently. Dr. Gillian Forrester is a cognitive neuroscientist. She studies how we use our dominant and non-dominant hands.
We're watching the children's handedness behavior. We want to see if they're using their left or their right hand to do certain activities.
90% of the population are right-handed. Gillian has gathered together a group of right-handed children to observe how they use both their hands in everyday life.
We'd expect our right-handed kids to use the right hand when they're doing anything that's manipulating an object, for instance, throwing balls or writing with pencils. But what we're finding out, actually, is that it doesn't mean they use their right hand for all types of behaviors.
So what would they use their left hand for then?
Something that has a social or an emotional component, so they're dealing with a friend or themselves. The left hand comes into play a lot more during social interactions than we would have expected it to.
Her research has found that right-handed children use their left hand a lot for social actions. Gestures like hugs, pats on the back, or reaching out to a friend during play. To investigate this further, she set the children a challenging task. They have to move all the discs from peg to peg without placing a larger disc on top of a smaller one. And as they attempt this, Gillian observes how they use both their hands.
We're expecting to see that they will use the right hand as their dominant hand to move the discs or the rings from one peg to the other.
She has noticed that something interesting begins to happen when the children become confused or frustrated by the test.
What we're finding is that as a task becomes more complicated, or the child experiences more stress, they're tending to get that left hand involved ever more. So they bring the hand to the face and
Head scratching.
absolutely.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Gillian sees the children using their left hand more when they experience strong emotion. And she thinks the reason might lie in the way the two hemispheres of the brain work. Each hemisphere controls the opposite side of the body. In simple terms, the left side of the brain, which deals with practical tasks, controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain, which deals with emotions, controls the left side of the body. It's believed that this division developed so that each side of the brain could specialize in different types of behavior.
It's very advantageous because it means that you can perform two tasks at the same time. So, for example, the left hemisphere can help you control those structured sequences of actions like a feeding behavior, but at the same time, they can use that right hemisphere to keep them alert of predators. So they're essentially getting a parallel processing system.
And that aids survival.
Absolutely.
New studies suggest that the right side of our brain developed to deal with danger and unpredictable situations. So Gillian thinks this is why right-handers use their left hand when they're experiencing strong emotion or in social interactions. That's all very well, but what if you're left-handed like me?
Now, I'm a natural left-hander. Does that mean that my brain is wired up in a different way?
There's about 10% of the population that is left-handed, and within that 10%, about a third have the exact reversal of the brain that us right-handers have. So
like a flipped over brain.
Yeah, exactly. So in the remaining 70% of left-handers, actually the brain is organized in the same way as right-handers. It's likely that there's some transference of signals between the hemispheres before information passes to the hand.
Though our brain may be wired to our hands in different ways, Gillian's work suggests that all of us may be using our non-dominant hand more than we realized. It responds to our emotional side and may play an important part in our social lives.
We've looked in forensic detail at the mechanics of the hand, what gives it its strength and phenomenal range of movement. But there's one final secret we've yet to uncover. Hidden beneath our fingertips are the workings of one of the most complex and vital systems in our body, our sense of touch.
Our sense of touch is, for me, the pinnacle of what the hand can achieve. And it's a fascinating way to show just how powerful it can be. Sarah McLean was born blind. She's been reading Braille since she was 5 years old.
So Sarah, the ends of your fingertips must be very sensitive indeed.
Yeah, I guess they are. I mean, touch is essential to everyone, but for me it's kind of like two senses in one, I guess. It's how I read and it's how I perceive things, so yeah, they will be.
And this machine here can actually print and read Braille out, if you like.
Yeah, you can read off it via the wee keypad at the bottom.
And how does it work?
Well, these are just the raised dots, and then Braille is a 6-dot system. So all the alphabet, all the letters and words are made up of different combinations of these 6 dots.
So can you read off this pad now?
Yes. Going to read an extract from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Okay.
Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail.
I should have a try at this, do you think?
Yeah, why not?
Have you got anything I can read?
Yes, there are some words on there.
Okay, so I'll just run my fingers over it and I can feel a little series of raised dots there. Mm-hmm. And some shorter series there.
I can feel dots, but I'm also using my eyes to help. How Sarah gets her language out of this series of bumps is really impressive.
I'm going to reveal what the word was.
Hidden secret, yes. Yeah. Okay, so the top one says George, and then that tiny dot there is to show it's a capital, so obviously it's your name. And then that one says Sarah, so my name obviously. And then this is a sentence, and it just says, hello, this is Braille.
I'm blown away, actually.
It's a great invention.
Sarah's sense of touch is incredibly refined. But all humans have this unique capacity of feeling. Our sense of touch is the most sophisticated connection our hand has with the brain. And it's our frontline contact with the world around us. To understand this ultimate ability of the hand, we're about to embark on the final part of our dissection. Our most complicated yet, the nerves.
Quentin's exposed and cleaned every single nerve here so that we can see that all of this front of the hand, which is a crucial one, especially for touch, is supplied by these two major nerves. You can see the median nerve and the ulnar nerve here. And this median nerve, if we look at it and follow it through, goes through the tunnel, comes out at this end, and if I now pick it up, you get an idea
of a little tree.
Precisely, how it gives branches to every single part of the hand. All we are seeing here are the main trunks. If this were a road network, these would be the motorways. And then there are smaller roads and little lanes, so that everything is reached.
What strikes me is the incredible intricacy of all those nerves. I mean, it must be really hard to dissect.
Well, these are probably the most difficult part in the hand to dissect. It also makes them the most exciting. It's really quite good fun to try and challenge yourselves to get the smallest branch possible held in place.
Nerves work by sending and receiving electrical impulses. When we touch a surface with our fingertips, sensory information is converted into electrical signals. These are sent all the way up to the brain via the spinal cord. The brain sends responses back, instructing the hand what to do. To get to the culmination of nerves within the hand, we have to open up the last untouched part of our specimen, the end of the fingers.
But as you get towards the end of the finger, we're getting a real concentration of all the smallest branches in the fat pad of the fingertip. And it's in this area that we're going to have the highest concentration of sensation for pretty much anywhere in the body. If I make a cut through the middle of the fat pad, then we'll see where all of these nerves are ending.
It's at the microscopic level that we can properly see these nerves. The green strands are the nerve fibers. Over 20,000 of these terminate in each fingertip. It's at these nerve ends that we take in sensory information. Dr. Francis McLone is a specialist on sensation. He's going to show me just how sensitive my fingertips are compared with other parts of my body.
We can demonstrate just how acute the fingertips are at detecting objects that are placed on them with a little experiment here, George. If you want to pop this blindfold on, I can give you a little test.
So that is 2 layers of blindfold, right?
Okay, now I'm going to put some objects here on the forearm and here on the fingertip, and I want you to have a bit of a guess at what I'm putting on your body. Yeah, any idea what that is?
Well, it's quite cool, it's quite smooth. A piece of plastic pipe or something?
Okay, let's try it across the fingertips now.
Ah, that was a banana.
Very good. Perfectly. Let's try another one. A little more difficult, possibly. Again, put it on your forearm and tell me what you think that is.
I really have no idea.
Now let's try and put it on your fingertips and have a go at telling me what you think that is now.
Oh, it's a coin.
Very good. Can you go one step further and say what coin it is?
Well,
you
I
may
feel
get it.
Oh, it's a pound coin.
Excellent.
That's astonishing. I can tell so much more with my fingertips. But that's not just down to nerves. Our sense of touch also relies on tiny receptors just under our skin.
Welcome back.
This is a section of skin from the fingertip seen under the microscope. The receptors are joined to the end of the black nerve fibers. Some respond to pain, some temperature. Others react to pressure and vibration. These are the most important for our sense of touch. There are more of these receptors in our fingertips than anywhere else in our body. They take in information as we touch and move our finger across a surface.
What we've got here is a section through the skin, and here beautifully we can see one of these receptors, a Meissner's corpuscle. Now, this Meissner's corpuscle picks up transients, very fast events that are happening on the surface of the skin, like fine texture. And we can just about see the beginnings of a ghost of another one here, and this is a Merkel's disc. And the Merkel's disc is looking at pressure. So if you indent the fingertip, these will send information to the brain all the time that indentation is there. And it's because of these little receptors that you were able to detect the very fine detail of those objects that I place in your hand.
We're still at the early stages of understanding how the relationship between touch receptors and the brain works. But that hasn't stopped one group of scientists attempting a hugely ambitious project to replicate our sense of touch artificially. What if I could touch these clothes remotely without even being here at all? Well, the idea that we could physically interact with objects in a virtual world may seem far-fetched, but actually it might be closer than we think. At Exeter University, Dr. Ian Summers is developing technology that simulates touch.
This is our tactile stimulator.
As incredible as it sounds, Ian claims he's designed a machine that lets you feel what you're seeing on a computer screen.
So would you like to have a go?
Yes, please. So let's put my finger on here.
That's right. You rest your finger on it and you move it around like a mouse. And what you see on the screen is a green rectangle that represents your fingertip. And also on the screen you see the surface of the textile. And
that is a piece of corduroy, and I'm actually feeling virtual corduroy on my finger.
that's the idea. And you've got a piece of corduroy there on the table, real corduroy, so you can
Very
compare
similar.
the two.
Very similar. That's really rough across the way, as you'd expect, and then up and down the way it's not nearly so rough because that's with the grain of the corduroy. So Ian, how is this possible? What's actually happening here?
Well, what we're trying to do is replicate what happens in a real touch situation. So if you imagine, for example, my finger running over the surface of this piece of hessium, then what happens is the interaction with the surface deforms the skin, and vibrations travel through the tissue underneath to the underlying touch receptors. So we're trying to reproduce that. So the job of our tactile stimulator is to deliver those kind of vibrations to the touch receptors in the finger.
The machine works by making pins on top of the computer mouse vibrate to trick the touch receptors in my fingertip. By changing the strength of the vibration, Ian can replicate the feel of different materials. As a general rule, rougher materials generate strong vibrations, whereas smoother materials generate weak vibrations.
So would you like to try another surface?
Yes, please. Let's
Right,
try
we've got something a bit smoother, some kind of silk, I think. So
Okay, so there's silk.
try switching to that one.
So that's a nice silk texture. Very smooth. Let's see how that feels. Yes, it's good. It's not as great as the corduroy, but it's good.
Yeah, I think that with smooth surfaces you're very aware of just the feel of the stimulator. Whereas for rougher surfaces maybe you're more aware of what's coming out of the stimulator.
Ian has so far simulated over 70 types of material. In studies, volunteers guess what around 60% of the virtual versions are supposed to be.
What were the challenges you faced in making virtual touch work?
I think the sticking point at the moment is not really the technology in terms of the stimulator and moving on the surface and whatever. It's we don't know enough about the nature of the real interaction between a real finger and a real surface. And so we don't really have enough information to know what are the right signals to put through our virtual system.
Because we understand so little about touch, Ian is still some way off having a reliable system. But if he's successful, it does have many potential uses. From online shopping and gaming, to helping surgeons perform operations remotely.
I'm genuinely surprised by Ian's work. I would never have thought that we were so close to being able to touch things in a virtual world. Well, what strikes me most is that even with all our technology, we struggle to replicate the complexities of human touch. And that just demonstrates how amazingly sophisticated our hands really are.
I've discovered so much I didn't know about what makes our hands unique. Over the course of our dissection, I've seen the incredible natural engineering that lies behind every action. The muscles that give our hands their strength. The tendons that channel their power. how the thumb gives us unrivaled movement, the coordination and intricate control of the fingers, the sensitivity of our fingertips that connects us to the world. And what I find most impressive is the way it all works together to give us such a versatile and powerful instrument.
If you'd asked me before we started what defines us as human, I think like most people I'd have said our brain, but now I'd have to include the hand. Having taken it apart bit by bit and seen the incredible natural engineering inside, I've got a newfound respect and admiration for this part of our anatomy. Without hands, we wouldn't be who we are.
Next time, we take apart a human foot.
That is the first time I've ever seen inside the foot.
We'll uncover the extraordinary inner workings that drive every step we take. And I'll meet people with unique talents.
Should get you making a paper aeroplane, really, shouldn't I?
Oh, come on, Tom. Come on.
To discover what gives us a rare and crucial ability. To stand and walk upright.
Discover what it was like filming dissections normally not accessible to the public on the BBC TV blog. And next week, George and the team get to grips with the incredible human foot. Don't miss it.